The Hunt brothers, Nelson Bunker and William Herbert, were larger-than-life figures. Known for their audacious ventures and larger-than-life personalities, they were the epitome of Texas oil tycoons. They were Texas oil tycoons, deeply entrenched in the oil industry that defined much of the state's economy during the 20th century. They inherited their father's vast fortune, a legacy built on the black gold that flowed beneath the Texan soil. And they yearned for even greater wealth and influence, always seeking the next big opportunity to expand their empire. The brothers held a deep distrust of traditional financial systems. They feared inflation, which they saw as a threat to their wealth. They believed in the enduring value of hard assets such as gold and silver, which they saw as a hedge against economic instability. Silver, with its long history as a monetary metal, became their target. They saw it as undervalued and ripe for investment. They believed they could corner the market, buying up vast quantities of silver to control its supply and drive up prices. They would control the supply, making it scarce and thus more valuable. And they would reap unimaginable profits, adding to their already substantial wealth. The Hunts were already legends in the oil industry, known for their uncanny ability to find oil where others couldn't. They had a knack for finding oil where others couldn't, turning barren lands into lucrative oil fields. But their ambitions went beyond oil. They were always looking for the next big thing. They saw an opportunity in silver. It was undervalued. It was overlooked by many investors at the time. It was ripe for the taking, and the Hunts were determined to seize this opportunity. The Hunts began quietly amassing silver, buying it in large quantities without drawing too much attention. This was the start of their audacious gamble, a high-stakes game that would have far-reaching consequences. It would have consequences for the world, shaking the foundations of the global financial markets and leaving a lasting legacy. The Hunt brothers' foray into silver began in the early 1970s. Nelson Bunker Hunt and William Herbert Hunt, sons of the Texas oil tycoon H.L. Hunt, were no strangers to the world of high-stakes investments. They had already made a name for themselves in the oil industry, but the economic landscape of the 1970s presented a new opportunity. They started accumulating physical silver. This wasn't just a casual investment, it was a calculated move. They believed that silver, unlike paper currency, would retain its value in times of economic instability. They stored it in Switzerland, a country known for its secure banking system. The Swiss vaults became the resting place for their growing hoard of silver. It was a time of great economic uncertainty. Inflation was rampant, and the value of the dollar was plummeting. People were lining up at gas stations, and the cost of living was skyrocketing. The Bretton Woods system, which had pegged the dollar to gold, had collapsed. This collapse sent shockwaves through the global economy, creating a fertile ground for alternative investments. The Hunts saw this turmoil as their chance. They were convinced that silver would be the ultimate safe haven in these turbulent times. They believed silver would be a safe haven. Unlike paper currencies, which could be devalued by government policies, silver had intrinsic value. It would hold its value as paper currencies faltered. The Hunts were betting on silver to protect their wealth from the ravages of inflation. Their strategy was simple but audacious: buy as much physical silver as possible. They bought silver coins, they bought silver bars. They were relentless in their pursuit. They bought silver futures contracts. These contracts allowed them to control even more silver than they physically possessed. They used their vast wealth to leverage their purchases. The Hunts were not just buying silver, they were cornering the market. They borrowed heavily to acquire more silver. Banks were more than willing to lend to the Hunts given their substantial assets and reputation. Their appetite for silver seemed insatiable. They were buying up silver mines and securing long-term contracts with mining companies. The price began to rise. As the Hunts continued to buy, the market responded. Silver prices started climbing, attracting even more attention. The Hunt brothers' plan was in motion. They had set the stage for one of the most dramatic financial plays in history, and the world was watching. As the Hunt brothers' silver purchases escalated, the price began its inexorable rise. In 1979, silver went on a tear. It doubled, then tripled in price. The public took notice. Speculators and investors got caught up in the frenzy. The Hunt brothers' influence on the market was undeniable. They were the driving force behind silver's meteoric rise. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The Hunt brothers became synonymous with silver. Their every move was scrutinized. Newspapers ran headlines about the silver rush and the Hunt brothers' silver corner. The Hunts had captured the world's attention, but their success would be short-lived. The higher the price of silver climbed, the more precarious their position became. The peak of the Hunt brothers' silver speculation came in January 1980. Silver prices reached an all-time high of over $50 per ounce. The Hunt brothers were on top of the world. They had seemingly achieved the impossible. They had cornered the silver market, or so they thought. Their massive hoard of silver was worth billions. They had leveraged themselves to the hilt, but the market was becoming increasingly volatile. The Hunt brothers' grip on silver was starting to slip. Unbeknownst to them, the forces of regulation and the realities of the market were about to turn against them. The silver bubble was about to burst. Section 5. The walls begin to close in. As the silver price rocketed skyward, alarm bells began to ring in the halls of power. The regulators took notice. The unprecedented rise in silver prices was not just a market anomaly, it was a potential threat to the stability of the entire financial system. The Hunt brothers, with their aggressive buying spree, had managed to corner a significant portion of the silver market, causing prices to soar. The Federal Reserve, concerned about the Hunt brothers' unchecked speculation and its potential to destabilize the financial system, stepped in. The central bank, which oversees the nation's monetary policy, saw the need to intervene to prevent a possible economic crisis. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and strategies were devised to counteract the Hunts' influence. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC, implemented new rules. These regulations were designed to curb excessive speculation and bring order back to the chaotic market. The CFTC, tasked with overseeing the futures and options markets, recognized the urgency of the situation and acted swiftly. They limited the amount of silver futures contracts a single entity could hold. This move was aimed directly at the Hunt brothers, who had amassed a massive position in silver futures. By capping the number of contracts, the CFTC hoped to diffuse the Hunts' market dominance. The Hunt brothers' game was under threat. Their strategy, which had relied on the ability to continuously buy and hold large quantities of silver, was now being challenged. The new regulations meant they could no longer operate with the same level of freedom and influence. The new regulations had an immediate impact. The market reacted swiftly to the news, and the once bullish sentiment began to wane. Traders, who had been riding the wave of rising silver prices, now faced a new reality. The Hunt brothers' ability to leverage their position was curtailed. They found themselves in a precarious situation, unable to buy silver as freely as before. The market dynamics had shifted, and their influence was waning. They could no longer buy silver as freely as before. The restrictions imposed by the CFTC had effectively put a cap on their ambitions. The Hunts, who had once seemed invincible, were now facing the harsh reality of regulatory intervention. The market, sensing a shift in the balance of power, began to turn against them. Investors, who had previously followed the Hunts' lead, started to sell off their silver holdings. The sentiment had changed, and the market was now in a state of flux. The silver price started to decline. The once soaring prices began to plummet, and the Hunts' position weakened further. The market correction was swift and brutal. The Hunt brothers' once impregnable position was crumbling. The walls were closing in, and their empire, built on silver, was beginning to collapse. The regulatory actions had achieved their intended effect, and the Hunts were left to face the consequences of their speculative gamble. Section 6. Silver Thursday, the day the music died. On March 27, 1980, a day that would forever be known as Silver Thursday, the bottom fell out of the silver market. The price plummeted. Panic selling ensued. The Hunt brothers, facing margin calls and unable to meet their financial obligations, were forced to liquidate their silver holdings at a huge loss. Their empire, built on borrowed money and silver dreams, crumbled around them. The Hunt brothers, once symbols of American wealth and audacious risk-taking, were now facing financial ruin. Their fall from grace was as swift and dramatic as their rise to power. The silver bubble had burst, leaving a trail of wreckage in its wake. Section 7. The Long Road to Ruin. The aftermath of the silver crash was brutal for the Hunt brothers. They faced lawsuits from investors and creditors who had lost fortunes. The Securities and Exchange Commission charged them with market manipulation. The Hunts fought back, but the legal battles took their toll. They were forced to sell off assets to cover their debts. Their once vast fortune dwindled. The Hunt brothers, once celebrated for their business acumen, were now vilified as reckless speculators. They had flown too close to the sun, their wings had melted, the fall from grace was devastating. The legal battles dragged on for years. The Hunt brothers eventually filed for bankruptcy, their empire in ruins. Section 8. Picking up the pieces. The Hunt brothers never fully recovered from their silver debacle. They spent their later years trying to rebuild their lives and reputations. They lived out their days far from the spotlight that had once shone so brightly upon them. They were a cautionary tale of the dangers of unbridled speculation and the hubris of believing one could control the market. Their story, however, continues to fascinate and serve as a reminder that even the mightiest of empires can crumble under the weight of their own ambition. The Hunt brothers' Silver Saga remains one of the most dramatic and cautionary tales in the history of finance. Section 9. A cautionary tale of greed and excess. The Hunt brothers' attempt to corner the silver market is a timeless story about the allure of wealth, the perils of speculation, and the importance of regulation. Their audacious gamble had far-reaching consequences. It led to stricter regulations on commodity trading. It left a lasting impact on the silver market. The Hunt brothers' legacy is complex and multifaceted. They were shrewd businessmen who took enormous risks. Their story serves as a reminder that even the most carefully crafted plans can unravel. It highlights the capricious nature of markets. The Hunt brothers' Silver Saga remains a cautionary tale, reminding us that greed and excess can lead to ruin.